So for my example of a classical conditioning, I'm going to be doing a hamster-like model. So this box is going to represent the hamster's house, looking from like the top of it. This little circle right here is going to represent the hamster's house, where like it's just like a little small house that you put inside the big old box, and he usually stays in here. So the hamster usually stays in there and never really comes out unless there's like fresh food. So the food is going to be the unconditioned stimuli. So let's label that the unconditioned stimuli. So the natural response that the hamster usually has when I put in food is that he comes out to eat. And that would be the unconditioned response. That's just what he naturally does. So if I put in like his bowl of food, which is right here, if I like take it out, clean it, put in food, he usually comes out. And every single time he runs out of food, I usually put in new food, and he tends to come out when I set it down. So you could hypothetically, I haven't really tested this, but you could hypothetically say that after a while, if I were to not put in food in the bowl, he would still come out. So what I mean by this is, let's say that the hamster was in his house, he ran out of food, I picked up the bowl to, like, you could say I could fill up the bowl with, or to fill up the bowl of food, and I set it down. The hamster's natural response would be to come out to check out the bowl. But in this case, it wouldn't have any food inside. So that would be the conditioned stimuli. Because after a while, the hamster would just think that I was automatically going to put food in there, inside of his bowl. But in this case, I would not. And also, I forgot to mention that the unconditioned response eventually becomes the conditioned response. There you go. So for this example, I'm going to be using a dog, and so this is a dog, and this is the owner of the dog. He wants to teach the dog how to sit. So teach the dog how to sit. So what he does is he gives it a treat, and then the dog realizes that every single time he sits, he gets a treat. So this becomes known as positive reinforcement. So every single time he sits, he gets a treat. So positive reinforcement. Now let's say you just take the treat away. That becomes negative punishment. So if the dog doesn't sit, he doesn't get a treat, which causes him not to really sit anymore. So he just kind of like goes on with his days without sitting, which means he doesn't get treats. So no sitting equals no treats, and that is known as negative punishment. Now let's say that the dog is so well trained that you can just remove the treat, so no treat, but he still sits. This becomes known as negative reinforcement. So now, if we move on to positive punishment, the treat is provided for the dog if he sits, but the dog just decides not to sit. So essentially, the dog gets a treat, but he doesn't sit, which essentially would decrease him sitting in the future. And the difference between operant and the other form of conditioning, classical, is that Blue has a choice. If she sits, she gets a treat. On the other hand, the hamster did not have a choice because he relies on me to feed him. So, yeah, that's the difference between the two.